I'm Mark Small. I'm co-host with Paul Ogden of Civil Discourse Now. We're both Indianapolis attorneys. We are shooting this show at Big Hat Books in Broad Ripple, which is on the north side of Indianapolis. Big Hat Books has an excellent selection of books, and it also has space for rent for various events, birthdays, holidays, whatever. So Big Hat Books is a place to call, and it's 202-0203. And it's an excellent store. Our guest today is David Lumley. He is chartered financial analyst and a certified financial planner with Raymond, affiliated with Raymond James. And we were talking about debt just a minute ago.
And I was going to ask the question: what taxes can we raise in this recession to help get out of this debt?
Well, let's put it this way: the argument is that the people will be hurt least by an increase in taxes are those who are making $1 million salaries. I don't have a problem with that as long as the money goes to pay down the debt. I think that's perfectly viable. As far as other taxes that can be raised, you really don't want to raise taxes in a recession, because that means that the people who are out spending money will spend less of it, or have less of it to spend.
Well, one place we could really cut in terms of spending for the government is like, we have 50 or 60,000 troops in Germany, and there is no Cold War. We could bring those people home. We could bring people home from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from various places. In other words, we could chop defense spending.
In that respect.
Yes.
Now, okay. Now, you bring those people back. Those people join the ranks of the unemployed. How would you employ them?
Well, we would increase taxes on the 1% and create jobs to build roads, build bridges, build things that we need that are crumbling. So something like 80% of our bridges in the United States are in functional disrepair. They're flawed in major ways. We put these people to work.
But that would create more debt, because those would be government jobs.
Now, here's understood. But here's the argument to do that.
They'd be spending the money here. Go ahead.
This is the Keynesian argument. And the Keynesian argument is, let's borrow short term. Let's reinvest that money in infrastructure. You could rebuild airports. You could rebuild roads and bridges. You could set up, redo the nation's electric infrastructure, which apparently also is in need of repair. You could fund different kinds of research, that kind of thing. There is a longer-term payoff, and the argument to do that is that there is a multiplier effect from the spending that you do now. And some people say, well, if we don't spend the money, then we're not going to incur the debt. In the short haul, it may be worth it to do that because of the multiplier effect, and that may actually bring the economy out of the melees that it's currently in, or at least, let's say, increase growth from, say, 2% a year to maybe 3%, which is more normal. Let's put it this way: in periods of expansion, you can even have quarters where the economy is growing at say 4.5 to 6%, but then you start worrying about generalized inflation. But Milton Friedman believed that the economy over the long haul would grow at something along the lines of 3%, and this gets back to monetary stimulus. Let's just let the money supply grow at 3% for a year, and the economy will continue to grow at roughly 3% a year also. So I guess in the short haul, given the nature of unemployment at this stage of the game, I would be in favor of doing some targeted Keynesian stimulus in the form of, let's bring the troops back from Afghanistan and Iraq, put them to work, as well as other unemployed people doing infrastructure projects. And that will have some kind of benefit to the general economy. Look at what it did in the 1950s when Eisenhower was in office. He was essentially responsible for building the freeways.
Yes, he was.
As a result of that, you have a pretty marvelous nationwide system of roads, which are falling into disrepair right
that
now.
are decaying. That's, I would say, cut defense spending, put it in infrastructure. Those people's wages are being spent then here. It's going back into the economy as opposed to paying soldiers overseas in Germany, and they're spending the money in brothels and bars over there. And they should instead
spending in brothels and bars over here.
no, because they're posted overseas, and so they have nothing else to do. Here, they'd be going to grocery stores
The
and
mall.
The people still go to the mall. Okay, the mall. Go
Okay, they're still going to Walmart.
no, they'll go to the various local merchants like Big Hat Books and spend their money here, and it stays here in the United States, and people profit from it. And so that would be my.
Then we can take the tax proceeds and turn around and pay down the debt.
See.
In a perfect world.
In the perfect world. Federal Reserve. A quick question on that. You and I talked a little off the air. Have a lot of people talk about we need to audit the Federal Reserve. It's sort of a mysterious entity. What are your thoughts on that?
The Federal Reserve ought to remain a free-standing entity. I think right now its job is extremely difficult to do. Basically, full employment and relatively stable prices. It appears to me, again, I don't have a PhD in economics, that they've pretty much lowered interest rates to the greatest extent that they possibly can. That, in turn, is pushing on a string. What it does do, and this is, we've talked about this before, is it pushes rates lower. It allows banks to borrow at very low rates, and they turn around and loan the money back to us at higher rates, so their profit margins are higher.
So the banks are benefiting.
The banks are benefiting from that.
And they need to benefit. They've done, I mean, look at what happened to them in 2008. They were just really shoved into such a tight situation that they had to be saved because they had loaned money and then they'd done all these weird things with their mortgage loans and
They securitized them. The big issue with all of these mortgages was the fact that there were people to whom banks loaned money who should not probably have gotten loans.
like Donald Trump.
Well, that's a matter of discussion. Yeah, he's blown up a couple of companies before, so.
And the banks were out there encouraging people to buy their own home, and we're winking it.
Well, that was public policy too.
Yeah, I know, but
Isn't it still public policy? I mean, have we really changed that policy? Which I think we went too far in that direction.
Mitt Romney does too.
Oh, good.
And he's the one who's saying, let's let the whole market collapse, and then we'll have investors come in and buy up all the homes and then turn around and sell them for a profit.
Well, and so they can be rented out. He said so that we'll have, and then we'll have a nation of renters instead of people who own their own homes. So that's
Own their own home and deeply in debt.
Deeply in debt. Well, I mean, by and large, home ownership, the assets, the equity in people's homes, even though they have declined in value, that's still a substantial asset for most Americans.
yes, and I'd rather own my own home and live there, and know that I don't have to answer to somebody else or fewer people than and to have a landlord who can walk into the premises at any time. If I'm paying $900 a month anyway, whether it's going to accrue equity or to pay rent, I just assume.
Now, let me ask you a question. Would you? And
This is our show.
This is-
We ask the questions.
No, I think this is a fair question.
Okay.
All right, equity. Do you want to have $100,000 in equity in your real estate, in your home, or do you want to have $100,000 of equity in various companies, stocks?
Oh, I'd rather have it in the home.
And that's your preference.
Yes.
Okay.
Because if I were paying rent, I wouldn't be buying stock. I'd be pissing the money away one way or another.
Well, stocks aren't liquid, though. You can't just...
If they're
They're more
secret-
liquid.
They're more liquid than
They're
real
more
estate.
liquid.
If you buy Anheuser-Busch stock, it's liquid.
That's true.
I'm sorry, that was... Sometimes I say these
That
things...
was a pun.
It wasn't a pun. It was a wasn't a pun, it was a joke. Anyways, well, okay.
Do you want to turn to our other subject?
Yeah, the one quick topic this week, the last few days, and we are in Broad Ripple. Broad Ripple is on the north side of Indianapolis. An individual went on Facebook and announced that there was going to be an Occupy Broad Ripple with guns to be held tonight, which is Saturday, November 26th, from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. Broad Ripple has a lot of bars, but it's kind of an upscale bar area, and there are a lot of college-age people. This is the weekend when college students come home for Thanksgiving break. Butler University is located a short distance from Broad Ripple. Their students, a lot of them, are going to be going home for break. So you're going to have a lot of college students one way or another. The individual who announced this on Facebook page, that he's going to have Occupy Broad Ripple with guns, has no connection with the Occupy movement. And when I went to his Facebook page, I saw that it said political beliefs, National Alliance. I checked, and the National Alliance is a neo-Nazi organization. It was founded by a former associate of George Lincoln Rockwell, who was the American Nazi Party. He was the guy who wrote the Turner Diaries that Timothy McVeigh used as his Bible prior to blowing up the federal building in Oklahoma City. So the individual occupying has no connection with the Occupy movement. Going back to 2004, he was...
Mark, let me stop you there. In
Yeah.
his defense, he said National Alliance wasn't the National Alliance, it was the National Alliance for Families. And then we found out more about that.
Yeah, the National Alliance for Families is for POW, MIA families whose loved ones have gone missing or captured, etc. There's nothing in anything that he's written on any blogs or on the internet that relates to that organization.
And we found out later that he had linked to Stormfront.
Yes.
The Stormfront is a neo-Nazi group. It's one apparently it's sort of taken over from National Alliance. White pride, white supremacy. You go to their website, stormfront.org, and that's what it clearly stands for. And there were other things we found on the internet going through that suggested your earlier confirmation or your earlier thinking was correct.
Yes, so if anybody's watching this, we're going to try to get this on the internet in time for the 11 o'clock deadline. But the thing is, if he was coming to Broad Ripple to educate people about gun rights, and he's calling on people to come here with their guns, he's from 25 miles away. This isn't where he lives. If he's coming here to educate people on gun rights, he's doing it at 11 o'clock at night when most of the people on the sidewalks in Broad Ripple are at some level or degree of intoxication.
And probably shouldn't be handling guns.
And they shouldn't be handling guns. Or they're a designated driver, or they're somebody who's working as a bouncer at a bar. They're definitely not going to be interested in listening to a lecture about anything, especially gun rights. Also, and if that's not his purpose, if his purpose isn't actually what he says it is, then it's either because he wants to discredit the Occupy movement, or he wants to discredit some other movement.
And being the more level-headed person, as one of our readers suggested, and being in favor of gun rights and gun ownership, one of the things I strongly point out is you've got to be careful who you associate with, because you can have a legitimate cause, and then you have people from the fringe that try to latch on to that legitimate cause.
Yeah, so he could be...
And it undermines that cause.
Yeah. So he could be undermining the cause of NRA, people who are legitimately hunters, people who are interested in gun rights, and I can have disagreement with that, but that doesn't mean that I'm calling people Nazis who are doing that. But if he was really wanting to use an organization that was more in line with his thinking, you would have thought that he would have said, like, having a tea party in Broad Ripple with guns or something like that. It's completely off the Richter scale. This was a development this week that is really, really unfortunate, and people should just ignore this individual and just don't show up for the rally or whatever it is. We have had a good show today. Dave Lumley has been our guest.
Thank you.
We've talked about economics and education and just surprised him a whole bunch by going off on tangents as we usually do.
Exactly.
Paul, as always, it's an honor
Thank
and a
you, Mark.
pleasure to sit here. We'll use each other later off the air and just yell at each other then.
Okay.
This has been Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small, co-host Paul Ogden. Have a good one. Hey, I need that.